I think that's good. Test, test, test. Check, 1, 2, 3, check. Not too loud, I hope. Don't think it's too loud. I think horizontal's good. Yeah, I think we're good. Good deal. Hey, Codemaster. How goes it? Why are you not showing up in my stream? Suspicious. If I go to desktop, is it there? I don't see you. Hey, I have about 15 years of experience doing modeling, simulation, aircraft displays, that fun stuff. Mostly, fortunately, using more modern C++ than what I would consider like out of date C++, which I know a lot of people end up kind of getting stuck with, either by choice or no choice at all. So I've been fortunate in that manner. Now, why aren't you showing up in my chat? Can I explain what a thread is? Do you mean like a standard thread? Because that's just kind of a an operation context for an operating system, right? Ability to process in parallel. All right. I think I am ready to get started. Don't know what's going on with my chat window. I'm gonna test something here. Twitch message test. Does that appear? It does not. Uh-oh. Why does software never work? Probably because of me. Okay, that's there. Oh well. I don't know. Let's move this out of the way for now. All right, so today I have been working towards getting my C++ port going for the game I've been working on, and made some progress last stream, made some progress last night, and we got automated software deployments working for the web. So now we can build and deploy and be able to try it out on my website, hit play, and we have it. Obviously, not a whole lot going on here right now, so we do want to continue making progress so that the automated deployment works. Is it normal for concepts being hard? Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? Programming is hard. understanding how a computer works is hard because there are a lot of moving pieces. Even with 15 years of experience, I am still learning. And honestly, I am also forgetting. So I'm in this weird situation where I'm starting to forget some of the stuff I've learned over the years because I'm not actively working on using specific pieces of either C++ or some kind of problem space I'm working in. And then I'm also learning. And so it's a tough balance. It feels like I have this like array, if you will, of memory, and I have to dynamically reallocate it and copy over stuff I remember and then discard stuff that I'm not using anymore in order to conserve space. So that's kind of the boat I'm in. And I am constantly learning, which is why I work on software projects here, is to learn. And part of that for me is also learning to use the LLM tools that are coming out, that are starting to be more common, I guess you could say, especially in a professional environment. And so working on improving how I use the tools, code reviewing the output of the tools, trying to get all that figured out, and like coming up with better ways to use it. All of that is me just trying to learn. We're all just trying to learn here. And there is no chat on screen. What the H? All right. How do I fix that? Let me try something here. Properties. Hit OK. I think I can run a test. Trigger a test. Nothing. See, this is why I need to make my own Twitch chat, which, with Awin set up and the web working, I think I'm getting close to being able to do that. And maybe I'll do it on stream, but I need to learn how to use the Twitch and YouTube APIs to query messages. But clearly it's possible, otherwise there wouldn't be software that could do it. And I figured I could make my own app and have it sit right here to show messages. And then we could build from it, potentially. Oh, I'm being attacked. So yeah, this is live on the website now. So I think I don't have touch controls in quite yet, but I should be able to hit play, go to full screen, rotate it, and there it is. So that's kind of cool. Making a awesome Android game with C++ and Raylib. I've gotten a little bit of Raylib up and running in Android before, except you had weird jittering, specifically on Xiaomi, Adreno. Interesting. Oh, I wonder if you're running into now, I want to caveat before I say anything. I am not a GPU graphics expert, but I'm wondering if you're running into like sub-pixel rendering issues because of floats versus using an integer in order to like position and draw things on the display. Maybe. I don't know. Monster Day too many at this point, I think. So, I have had my friend Claude start building an API that I obviously told it to build for handling key keyboard, gamepad, mouse inputs generically, so that I can also have it implement the touch interface and wire into that same API, so that I don't end up with like a bunch of duplicated code, that kind of thing. I'm also working on having it do what I'm calling, not me, this is a fairly common pattern, but using a command interface or design pattern where you can submit commands to a queue, have them operate, perform state changes for my game, and have it like a single point of entry for state changes. Makes it a little easier to debug down the road, a little easier to understand there's only this one point where changes are occurring inside your game. And it will have maybe down the road the added benefit where I could do some crazy stuff like wire in a REST API to drive commands to pilot the game. I can't guarantee anything, but it would be cool if someday I had the ability for you, chat, to be able to like, hey everyone, just go to this link, and as soon as this loads, it automatically adds your aircraft that you're going to pilot into this like world, and if it's effectively, it kind of becomes like an MMO. I don't know what service I would use to host it. I could run my own server, but I also don't want to risk exposing a system to the open internet, because I don't want to have to deal with like the security of it, that kind of thing. Oh, hey Anon. Hey, I'll take it. I appreciate you stopping by. Ooh, Buffer, I got bad news for you. He is in my garage, I think. And I'll show you guys. Hang on. He started sleeping on my car. He's a little twerp. Let's see. I don't know if you guys can see this. This way. That little punk just getting on my car and having a nap like he owns it. Ridiculous. Trill is a he, and he is a twerp. And he knows it. But yeah, it'd be cool if you'd be like, as soon as you enter the world or enter the website, you just pop into this global world to test out the game features, combat, that kind of thing. Full screen. We'll see. But anyway, I've already had Claude do some work for me, so I kind of want to review it to see if it makes sense. I can already tell some of it makes sense and I do like, and some of it I'm like, this isn't quite what I was going for. And so I might re-prompt it to change the design and see what I can get out of it. But for those who are new here, who is not aware of what we are currently looking at, this is QML. QML is, I assume it's Qt markup language. It's like a JSON, JavaScript type of language that gets loaded and compiled into C++ or bytecode, depending. If I'm using JavaScript directly, then I'm pretty sure it just gets interpreted. But things like this will get compiled. I also don't like, is there not a format document? Do I not have format on save? That doesn't sound like me. Settings, format on save, true. Okay. So one thing that I've started doing is for game logic, and this is a really common pattern with video games in general, is developing systems being it like logic blocks that perform specific tasks on modifying game state, such as moving entities. System movement is what is in charge of moving my entities around. Let's switch this over to web. I'm getting all kinds of weird issues here. Here we go. Build. So here we are compiling C++. You can kind of see it here too as it scrolls by into WebAssembly, WASM binary, so that your browser virtual machine can load it and run it. And when I do that, I get to do this. Can run my game in a browser. So this is kind of where things are at. I think the gamepad is hooked up still. Yep, gamepad is hooked up. Okay. So I need to fix some of these changes. I have a systems runner, so this will sit here and iterate over all the systems. I have a command queue, which is where I'm pushing the state changes to. All of this is just rendering stuff that I'll eventually clean up. So it's really this piece, not even this piece, it's this piece, the command queue, these commands, and these actions I want to make sure are doing what I want it to do in such a way that I can still like maintain and extend this, because part of what I'm trying to get done now that will make my life easier in the future is the ability to rapidly or quickly add features to the game or remove without like having to touch hundreds or thousands of files to make it happen. I mean, there's definitely some skill to programming in general. I think language syntax, from like the perspective of what's different between C# or C++ or hell, even QML right here, that's just practice. That's practice, and you know, kind of stressing your mental ability to try new features out to help like remember what you're trying out so that you can use it later to solve different problems. That's just practice. Oh god. If I want to add a feature to C++, doesn't C++ have enough features as it is? Honestly, the big thing with C++ for me is, and there is no easy answer to this. I wish there was a way that we could deprecate and drop features that are no longer needed to clean up the STL and, you know, try and keep the language, relatively speaking, simpler. I would hate to say simple. C++ is not simple. So I don't know if there's any feature I'd want to add. I've been looking forward to reflections forever. I wish maybe we had reflections much sooner than we're getting them, but fortunately we are getting them. But to be fair, I don't think any language, any natively compiled language had the technology at the time in order to do reflections like we're doing them today. So I don't know. That's tough. Yeah. Yeah, there's like, I mean, even having used C++ for as long as I have used it, I've probably maybe have only used 25%, maybe 50% of all of its features. And there's probably another 25 to 30% that I'm not even aware exists just because I don't keep up with all the releases, that kind of thing. So I do make use of that, of like projects like this in order to like, hey, is there a new way to solve this that I'm not aware of? And you know, do things like that. I've never used coroutines, for instance, in anything professional, and I know it solves a pretty useful problem, but I've never used them. I don't even know if I can tell you how to use them. Yeah, the preprocessor stuff is rough. You know, C compatibility. Well, this is the problem, right? If we took away the C compatibility of C++, then C++ wouldn't exist. Or it exists, but no one would use it. Even new languages coming out today, they have to support C in some fashion. Someone asked, or someone mentioned you've never seen QML. So this is QML, what you're seeing in front. It's a markup language with Qt, which is a GUI framework front end. It's also used to develop KDE. And basically, these components you're seeing here are Q objects in memory. So just like a regular old class in memory, with the Qt property system. And anytime I take a value and assign it to a property, it automatically handles bindings. That means anytime a value changes, it will automatically apply that changed value to what it's bound to. So I don't have to write in an update function every frame all of the math and all of the assignment or copies to update it. So that's super convenient, but it's also a trap if you don't know what you're doing, because you could end up in a situation where you have like a bunch of stuff bound to a bunch of other stuff, and you get to a point where like, oh, changing one value every tick percolates throughout the entire system and causes a bunch of stuff to change or re-update when you didn't need it to. So there's a trade-off here. I'm very familiar with this, very comfortable with it. I've been using it for a while, which is why I'm using it. That's why. And I've got this sucker building for Windows, Linux, Mac, Steam Deck, what else? Android, and the web, I think. I like the action mapping. This is what I want. So now I combined event types, Qt key up, key W, to an action for throttle, for instance. So that's cool. I like that. Now, I have these commands sitting somewhere. I don't know if I need them sitting here, though. Where's the bus? The bus is already all the way down here. Yes, QML is very similar to JSON because QML is based on ECMA scripting, which is basically JavaScript. And JSON is JavaScript object notation. So you'll see a lot of similarities. The big difference here, though, is Qt will parse these files and can convert them to C++ or bytecode. So you're not really experiencing like JavaScript level performance or anything like that. It's very much still highly performant, as long as you know what you're doing. Sometimes that's me. Okay. So the issue I think I have is with store dual. This is effectively like my game level right now that we see running. This is basically the data store. There's two entities here, ownership and bandit. Yep. Two entities. The problem is I want the idea of a level to be loadable, but the commands to be static. So this isn't store dual. This should be like store level? It's really the list of entities is probably what I would load in a level. So this would effectively change per level, except for ownership, because that's your player, right? Yeah, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask this guy here, my friend Claude, see if I can get it to do a little better. Trying to think, can we do this? I don't know why. You know what? I'm going to reset my chat app and see if that will fix chat. All right. Someone say something on YouTube. I guess I can. Or Twitch, actually. Test. Dang it. Why it break? New version available. Okay, looks like I need to do some updates. All right. That's all right. I'm replacing chat with Claude, so it's fine anyway. I'm not liking the store dual implementation or naming as it stands. The issue is the player will eventually have the option to load into a different level or scenario. This means the commands would stay static while the level would change. current implementation has the, well, yeah. Current implementation has the command handler associated with the dual, or what I would consider a level. Do you have a better approach to this such that loading a new level or scenario can occur without having to implement the same command handlers over and over? I am thinking Qt QML has an object, has one of these objects here called a loader, which can load state dynamically in parallel, asynchronously. And I'm picturing defining a level in a QML file, not dissimilar to at least like what we're seeing here. But I want to be able to do that without having to, reduplicate these command handlers. Worst case scenario, we stick all of this on a single object and put it at like the root level as like the game controller or something like that. So I'm curious to see if Claude comes up with something similar to that, or if it's just like out in the ballpark. Also don't know how long that's going to take. Everything else that it's done, I think I'm okay with. Access control, yeah, because this is just a fairly common action system. You would see this in Godot as well. There's nothing crazy happening here. Tracks the ID of an axis along with its position. Updates the action value. That makes sense. And I want to kind of get this solidified so that I can then add touch controls and have it also map to the same commands. That way I can have keyboard, mouse, gamepad, or touch all driving or steering the aircraft. Have I tried game design? Not really. I am not a game developer. I am trying to make a game, and it's probably going to turn out bad because it's my first game. But no, I have never done game design specifically. I like playing video games. I really, really enjoy video games. So maybe I can, steal some ideas. Obviously, mutate them, but maybe I can come up with like aspects of games that I enjoy. Part of like what I'm making here is one, using stuff I'm experienced with, and two, I'll be honest, keeping the art simple so that I don't have to apply my non-existing artistic ability to make a game. So I think I could still make something that looks kind of cool, but have simple shapes. So this game is available live right now on my website. There is no gameplay right now because I'm still in the middle of porting. I prototyped this in Flutter, which I have somewhere. So I have this, right? Still not a lot of gameplay. This is still like very. I've only been doing this for a couple of months, but this is more like what I really have up and running. I can, you can launch a missile, you can range in, you can range out. You got a little mini map in the corner. You got like fuel and health. You've got missile fly out. You've got an enemy you're about to take on who's kind of far away, and your missile might not make it in time because its range isn't capable. Things like that. And this would be like your very early mission, like, hey, can you take on a single player? Because it also would act as like the tutorial level. It's like, hey, I'm going to throw you in this world. What the hell do you do? Oh, something's coming. What do I do? I don't know. I'm going to fly away, right? And maybe you can dodge it. Maybe you can time it. And then you rotate real quick and you avoid it. Boom. And then you fire. So I'm trying to make it to where you can potentially outmaneuver or deploy a flare and and have a missile track the flare instead of you. So you'll have defenses. And the fewer resources you consume during a fight, maybe you can accumulate to buy or increase better updates, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm trying to port that over to this QML. What you see right now is really all I have running on the website. So you can go to the website, try it. And as I continue to port these features in, and I'll be honest, I'm probably going to have Claude help me do it, but I want to make sure I have like the base architecture laid out so that it just doesn't go ham and like generate a bunch of spaghetti. So I want to solidify that first, and then once it's ready, I'll be like, boom, do it. And then I'll have a good starting point to get this up and running and start adding my own game features to it. I also want to support this on mobile, so that's part of all of this, and Steam Deck. And it's all the framework. I'm using Qt, but all of the code, the scripting, CMake, all of that I have done to automate the deployments, to build on Windows, Linux, Mac, Steam Deck, etc. That's open source in GitHub. Now, Briarthorn, I am making source available, so you're free to look at it, use it locally, test it, do whatever you want with it personally. But I'm going to try, obviously, and release it on Steam at some point, assuming I can make it fun, which is honestly no guarantee. So we'll see. I make no promises. It could also be that I get burned out and you'll never hear from me again. And that's okay. That's a great question on how many levels. I'm not 100% sure yet. Mainly because I really want to try and figure out a solid gameplay loop early. So get that like 1v1 dogfight scenario going. Can I get AI to correctly, not LLMs, but like game AI, can I get that to work correctly such that like it feels fluid and like you're actually like fighting something sentient and complicated with decision making? I think that's going to be the hardest part. So I do want to get that 1v1 going first. And then after that, it all comes down to like how quickly I want to release versus how much time and effort I want to put into building this out, because there's all kinds of different scenarios we could do here, right? You could have mini versus mini, you could have 1v1s, you could have like SAM sites shooting at you, you could have corridors of, I don't know, land masses that you can fly behind to avoid getting shot down, that kind of thing. I'm not sure. And I am seeing like some chat stuff fly by, so it's almost like the scaling is wrong. Hang on. What is happening? That's so weird. What kind of game am I making? Roguelike, rogue-like, I think, or roguelite. I'm not sure which. There is a difference, which I didn't know until recently, but there is a difference. Yeah, and I'm trying not to be too realistic with this, if I'm honest, because, well, a couple of things. If I go for pure realism, then those who know their shit will think this is garbage because I don't know enough for pure realism. And it will only attract those who are interested in the pure realism. So I am trying to make this a little more approachable and just generally fun and easy to like get into and start up and get running, that kind of thing. So it's, you know, it is, we'll see. And it's honestly, it's just taking stuff I am comfortable doing, which is building aircraft displays, modeling simulation, and then trying to apply some kind of gameplay element to it. But yeah, you will, whether you come visit the stream or not, you will hopefully over the course of time see this evolve on the website itself. And then eventually I will throw this up on like itch and Steam, assuming I make progress. I work full time, so this all is like a bunch of maybes. But yeah, you can open this up in your browser on your phone. If you do it on your phone, you can also do full screen. There's no touch screen or anything yet. So that's kind of what I'm working towards right now, is figuring out how I want to handle game input so that I can dynamically change between touch, keyboard, gamepad, that kind of thing. So the game name itself, I would currently doesn't have a super strong meaning towards it. You'll notice just general naming aesthetic with my channel. So my channel name, Funnin Software, Funnin comes from the original game character I had as a kid when I played EverQuest. Funnin was a druid. So that makes me think Celtic, druid, things like that. So you'll notice a general theme or aesthetic with my naming conventions. Briarthorn, Awin, the framework I'm building this on, Carowin, which is patent pending, an app I may or may not make for Twitch chat instead of using this stupid OBS plugin thing that works half the time. So that's really where it's coming from, is just kind of an aesthetic thing. But that being said, there's nothing saying this game won't have the secret of Briarthorn that you will need to uncover, maybe by completing challenges or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. Yes, I have done software dev in aviation and just general modeling, simulation, integrating physics models, that kind of thing. Is there a way I can make my project add-on automatically update the current patch so there's no need to manually? That's tough. It depends. It depends what platform. It depends how you're doing it. Obviously, if you like play the web version, then it's automatically update. I say that lightly here because I do think from the browser perspective, if you already have a cached version of the game, you might have to like hit refresh a couple of times or clear your cache in order to get the next update. I'm not 100% sure. And then Steam is going to handle the updates yourself. Itch, I don't know how Itch handles things. I haven't really dug into it yet because I do want something playable before I really start doing my research for all of that. Tutorials on software aviation. Yeah, that could be interesting. It just depends. It's kind of niche. I'm sure there's some people who would be interested in it. All right, what did my friend Claude say? You've spotted the layering flaw precisely. Of course I did. I know what I'm talking about. And the fix falls out of a principle the design already implies. Handlers live with the state they mutate. Steer and throttle mutate ownership, and ownership belongs to the player/game, not to the duel. The mistake in store duel is that it conflates two lifetimes in one object. The player's craft plus intent handlers. Split those lifetimes, and the handlers are written exactly once ever. The split. Store game, the persistent store declared once in main and never reloaded, owns ownership and every player intent handler. When you add weapons, pause, sensor modes, the handlers land here once. Yeah, that makes sense. Scenario duel. The level, its entities, and its level local systems packaged as one swappable slot in the run order. The small framework piece that makes this work is a system group in Awin.entity, a system that ticks child systems 7 lines mirror. Okay, it's kind of losing me. I'm currently trying to do a game. More specifically, I'm porting a Flutter prototype I did into Qt Quick C++/QML, and I am using Claude to kind of get some of the boilerplate down with my guidance, of course. I'm not just saying, hey, do this and it's done. I got to review it, right? I can't just let any code drop in my code base. That would be insane. Hey, Dimitri, thanks for the follow. All right, so did it actually make that change? The refactor from what's on disk is small. Okay, so one thing I do before I commit any changes, especially if you're using an LLM, is I like to stage it and then have it do the changes so that I can see the delta between what's there and what's to come. Honestly, this is just general programming practice. This isn't anything to do with an LLM. Sometimes if I'm not quite ready for a commit, but I'm going to make some changes, then stage what you have. That way you can see deltas and choose if you want to keep or discard or change. I don't know. It just makes it easier for me to keep track of what's changing. Dude, Logue. So professionally, that is what I'm doing. I use Claude on a large code base, and you know, when real money and business is on the line, you can't just let it do its thing. You still have to pay attention. Like, my job doesn't change. I'm still reviewing code. It's just I'm reviewing what Claude did. And yeah, it's time consuming. It's probably not as fun as writing code, if I had to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, right? But that if you're honest with yourself, it's not that you need to be specific with the LLM, it's you got to understand the problem space that you work in order to make changes, which as a developer, that's what you're doing already. So if you know what you're doing, then it's an assistance. If you don't know what you're doing, it's vibing. And maybe if you know what you're doing and you're not happy with the output, then you don't use it. No big deal. All right. So it's making some changes. There we go. So now I have a master list of entities, which I kind of want to make a data model. I don't know if I like that. Okay, so it creates a store for the game. It associates the command queue. We have the observer, which is the player, which I call ownership. Yeah, I mean, hell, I'll be the first to admit, like, using an LLM, especially to like refactor, saves so much time. Especially once like, because you can tell this to plan so it doesn't make changes yet, and you can review the changes and you can like add snippets to the output of its plan to adjust and update so that you get the plan where you want it and then tell it to go. Do I use Claude to create docs? I haven't really, not yet. I mean, I Markdown. I use Claude for like what's the word? So like the project I work on at work, I have some documentation in place that describes the general architecture of the project. And so I might do things where I'll be like, hey, Claude, can you read through the repo and sketch out what you are observing as the architecture and see if it can read, like, see if it can make sense of the code base that's being written. And if it does and it makes sense, then that could become part of the documentation as markdown. But I'm not done like, I don't know, Word documents or PDFs or anything like that. Yeah, kind of like a spec. But I mean, the specs are still kind of handwritten because I'm still working with clients. We're still writing things down. I'm still attending meetings. We're still acquiring requirements. Uh, so not necessarily like writing that for me, but I have also tried to use it to build issues for like ticket tracking, and I'll be like, hey, here are the requirements from my client. Can you know, split this out into smaller problems that need to be tackled and turn this into epics or issues? And it does okay. I still have to kind of handhold it a lot. So I don't know if that really saves me time or if I'm just not good at using it yet. That kind of thing. Enumerate? Yeah. Yeah, kind of. Okay. Uh, did it? Wait. Ooh, I got got. I got got. It staged the changes for me, so it countered my solution to observing the changes. That's okay. We can still look at the delta. It's not the end of the world. All right. So what are we doing here? Focus loss swallows key releases, so drop all held input with it. Oh. I didn't ask for that, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. So as key inputs are being collected from keyboard, mouse, gamepad, etc., if I drop focus from the window, this clears out the action queue, which I may or may not want. I'm okay with it for now. We have my list of entities, which I think I'll eventually move this into its own data model. What are we dealing here? We have range ring is rotated by ownership heading. That makes sense. We have axes. What are these? Don't know. Axis steer, axis throttle. Oh, so it's just, oh, I see what it's doing. It's just saving a little bit of duplication. Just giving it an ID. What is this? A folded input value every... Oh, it just represents an axis. Okay. Axis refold, contribute. Replaces source contribution, refolds the value. Okay, so it's accumulating axis from, I think, multiple sources, which, okay, a little overdone, but okay. We still have a command steer, command throttle. When the axis value changes, we push state to the bus. All right, this is getting cleaned up. That's good. When the gamepad on axis changed, we process action. So whenever an axis changes, the axis moves. Yep, that still is the same. That's good. We have our command queue, store game. So the naming's a little better. And then we have our level that we're loading, which is scenario duel. So this is the first level of the game, which is going to be the 1v1. Axis in this situation is your gamepad. So or joystick, right? So it's basically this guy right here. And what I'm trying to do is set up an action system so that I can map either a key such as WASD or left, right, up, down, or joystick axis in order to steer. Because if I can get that figured out, then the next step is touch controls. So now if I want to add touch controls, all I have to do is integrate with the touch interface and say, hey, when, I don't know, a swipe up or swipe down happens, map it to axis throttle or something like that, right? And then you get the same game behavior, but with a different input interface. Okay, I think This is okay. Actually, what's that? Shape sector, radius. Oops. So ownership sensor times root dot pixels per meter. That's not going to work. Oh, we're okay. So it's calculating pixels per meter based on the size of the display, because I want my browser here. Where is it? Yeah, because this 40 represents like kilometers. So if 1 pixel is 1 meter, well, then this is 40 kilometers. I also think that radar volume is a little too large. I can modify that. So now in my scenario where this is defined, I should be able to the ownership field of view. Let's do 60 and build it. Yeah, and I'm not, to be fair, I am not implementing the interface myself. It comes with this Qt framework. I did have to integrate SDL3 for the gamepad controls because Qt doesn't support that out of the box. And that's in this project as well for building whatever application I want to build and give it gamepad. That's actually done in C++ because SDL3 is a C library. Okay. Let's try that again. There we go. Hey, look at that. The search volume worked. So all I had to do was modify that one value, and in theory... Sweet. Okay. I think this is in a much better spot. I think some refinement will be needed as I begin adding features, but I can address that once I hit a problem. So now, here's the fun part. Currently, on the website, actually, let me commit these changes now, get this rolling, because the pipeline does have to run. What did I do here? Implement an action system for mapping game commands to different input interfaces. Oh, I made a mistake. Don't do what I did. I committed that to main, reset current branch. Let's try that again. Let's create a branch. All right, let's do that again. Implement action system to map game commands to different input interfaces. Commit the change. Oh, would I like to stage? Yes. Commit the changes, publish. Go to GitHub. Create a pull request. Can always do another sanity check here to look over the changes that were applied. But I've already done that, so I'm okay with this. So I have software pipelines running for all of the platforms I support. So any changes I make, I'll know if I accidentally break on different platforms. So SteamOS, which is the Steam Deck, Android, Linux, Mac, web. And this web is important because if all of this passes, I'm going to merge the changes. And then on my website, briarthorn.game, you can just come to this play button or try it. So this is what it currently looks like. So we're not really going to visually see a bunch of changes, maybe the narrow search cone. But once I commit these changes and everything passes, it's going to automatically deploy the new game version to the website, and then it'll be hopefully up to date. And if all of that's good, then the next piece is touch control so that I can play this on Android and mobile. Because right now, it kind of looks like this. If I go full screen, kind of looks like that, but we rotate it, and then now it should turn into like a playable game in theory. Actually, you know what? Could I make that a playable game? I could like, cause I'm gonna add a mini map and everything, but I could like fill this space with that information, and then you could still like, I don't know, can I make this a single-handed game somehow as well? I'll have to think about that. Screen marriage. I know I need to use the space. I just don't know what I would put there. Cause I mean, you kind of see what I'm doing now or what I plan to do. Cause I have like the mini map here, and then the player health bar and fuel gauge, that kind of stuff over here. I do think I'll probably add like an objective list or something here. I'm not 100% sure yet. Down here is where your abilities will lie. But if I do portrait mode, which would kind of be cool for mobile, to be able to just like, I don't know. This is how I get rich, right? I find that portrait mode will be like what? Slop mode, and it's just like a try and come up with some kind of addictive swiping game that makes you want to keep coming back. And if you want to play the full version, you just rotate it. I think some kind of objective list maybe. So one of the things I would like to try and do, I don't know if my game design is good enough to do it, to pull it off, but one of the games I really liked a long time ago, and I guess at this point it is kind of a long time ago, but Destiny, the shooter game, they had raids, and in those raids you could play it a certain way to essentially activate hard mode, which I think is kind of a callback to the original Halo games that had the skulls. And so I think it would be cool where it's like, hey, here's the mission, here's your objectives, here's what you're equipped with. See ya, Diogo. And go. But then if you can figure out how to beat the level unexpectedly or in a way that doesn't consume all your resources, or you don't do any defenses or something like that, right? That's like hard mode, and I want to reward the player for beating the game in hard mode or something like that, right? I'm not 100% sure what that looks like yet. One thought I had would be like maybe on a per mission basis, maybe you have this scenario where you have a boss with like, I don't know, sidemen or side characters, henchmen's the word. And to make the game easy, all you have to do is defeat the henchmen and then you go after the boss. But maybe hard is you ignore the henchmen or you have to continuously avoid them while shooting at the boss. And if you can defeat the boss without defeating the henchmen, hard mode, right? Things like that. I've got a bunch of ideas like that floating in my head, but I really don't want to like solidify on any of that until I can figure out a relatively fun 1v1 scenario. All right. So that's merged. And I would say within the next anywhere from like 10 to 30 minutes, it will be deployed to the website, which again, this was just basic action system stuff, so no visual changes. The next piece of this puzzle then is touch. Let's see what Opus can do in this scenario. I'm running out of Fable minutes, and and to be honest, I kind of need it for work. And touch shouldn't be that complicated because we already have the action system in place. So I'm expecting like action touch to appear with control being axis steer, something like that, right? And then we'll bind the gestures. So I'll be curious to see if that's what Claude does here. I need to add a... Maybe I don't be specific. I wonder if it'll come up with it on its own. But I'm thinking like a joystick. So I have my prototype. I actually have built for Android on my phone. Where is it? And I'm still not 100% sure this is what I want to do. But basically, like, so I have the game. Oh, hit new game. You select which class you want to play. We'll start with the jet. And so it kind of looks like that, right? And it has a little thumbstick for controls. I don't know if that's how I want the game to be played mobile, but for now, it's how it's being played on other systems, so I guess that's what I'll do. I need to add a joystick touch control that steers and throttles ownership. I'll leave it minimal. Let's see what it does. I'm hoping it will implement an action touch or something like that that maps to the touch events and call it done. We will see. And while we wait, I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick and check on my cat. So I'll be right back. All right. The cat is in the building. I repeat, the cat is in the building. There's no missile shooting yet. I literally started yesterday porting my prototype into here. So if I had to guess, missile shooting will be in the next week or so. Depends on how much work I get done outside of streaming. But if you're trying to play, maybe you can be my touchscreen playtester. What are we thinking here? Is this saying anything? It's just reading right now. Touch, pointer, thumb, range projection. Honking. It's honking. What does that even mean? I'm gonna have to clean a lot of this up. Right now, I've just been dumping everything in main.qml. I will have to start separating this out. Create an actual tactical display, because I'm gonna need to reuse these range rings and the projection actually to create the mini map in the top right corner. I've got some language server issues. Missing property. This might be this might be CMake configuration issues. I'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, there's going to be no touch yet, not until we get these changes in. I don't know. Actually, I could probably look. I think it's like a touch handler. Tap handler. It's not tapping that I want. Is it drag? Gesture? Pointer. Maybe it's pointer. Drag, hover, pinch, point. Hover, drag. Maybe drag. Might be drag. Well, no, because I think drag is for like drag and drop. Hover, drag, point, pinch. I don't know, maybe it is drag. This is a description. Drag handler is a handler that is used to interactively move an item like other input handlers by default. It is fully functional and manipulates its target. Yeah, I guess honestly, I mean, I'm having Claude do this, so we'll see what it comes up with. But in my mind, the drag handler is kind of like controlling that circle, the joystick, if you will, and then we can limit its range and create a velocity vector from the drag from like start to finish and normalize it 0 to 1. And that's effectively the steering. But what Flutter gives you out of the box, Qt might require a little bit of extra implementation. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, the cat is in. Never mind. He's taking a bath. Don't look at him. He's busy. So now I'm wondering if action digital action. Yeah, I'm wondering maybe this is implemented with a drag handler. Ooh, it's really thinking. Maybe I should have had Fable do it. Oh, I have everything I need. All 3 explorations confirmed. Axis Invoke is the intended touch hook. Axis Steer is -1 to 1. Throttle is 0 to 1. The joystick X steer up throttle map onto those ranges directly. There is currently 0 pointer handling. And shape ring with gap length 0 is the natural rim. QML files reference the style singleton without importing themes, and new QML must be listed in CMake. Let me create the joystick component. Oh, it's happening. Now register it in the CMake QML module and wire it into main. Okay, so what is it actually doing? Creates a joystick. On value changed invokes axis steer, axis throttle. On active changed, set it to 0. I mean, that makes sense. That looks legit. We'll have to see what the implementation is fully. Now let me build to verify. QML is embedded via QML cache gen, so a rebuild will surface any QML types or syntax errors. Oh, it's doing it for debug. That's fair. I don't really... Yeah, so it's kind of oh, guys. Oh, you don't see it. Hang on. There. Got a little joystick in the corner. Check it out. That's kind of working. I mean, I'm using a mouse pointer right now, so we'll see how it works with touch. See, like, for stuff like this is kind of cool because it's not like critical implementation or anything like that. It's literally like, hey, it's a touch pointer, start end, gives yourself some kind of normalized velocity vector, 0 to 1 or -1 to 1, -1 to 1. So it's not like anything crazy here. It just saves a little bit of time. I like that that they got it highlighting when you're actually using it, and then when you let go, it's not there. Now I will eventually, because like if you imagine this as like a touch display, that's going to be a problem. So this will have to scale based on the size of the display, I think. Up to a maximum. What does it look like maximize? That's okay. We can fix that later. I'm not too worried about it. Let's see. How big is it compared to my phone? All right. A little bit longer. So it's kind of like that. Yeah, so I will need to make it a little smaller. Oh, we're being attacked. Turn. Okay. Yeah, we'll have to adjust it once it's done doing its thing. I can do that. I'm not too worried about that. So like right here, they give you visual implicit width and height. So that's what I need to modify. So I can do that here and be like implicit width is
root dot width times what? Quarter of the screen? 125 of the screen? A quarter of the screen? Oh boy, you're asking a question, aren't you? Do I think it's worth to go to school to be a C++ game dev? Well, first of all, I think it's worth going to school for computer science, regardless of game dev or any other domain or problem space. And if you happen to learn C++ there, cool. I think just getting your fundamentals in, data structures, algorithms, assembly, just general programming, knowing what a for loop is, what an array is, what a pointer is, things like that, like low level language stuff. All of that's worth learning regardless of whether you're going to do game dev or anything else. You failed a C++ class twice. That seems to be a bottleneck for most students. It's not the language that I have the issue with. It's just that it's kind of a systems design class where Yeah, that's tough. I mean, programming's hard, and I can't. I don't know exactly the type of problems you guys are given in school, but part of the challenge is understanding the problem so that you can solve the problem. I would say that's one of the harder things I've ran into in my career is not knowing how to program. It's knowing what your client is trying to solve and getting ahead of the problem so that you can not only maybe solve the problem for your client, but then also solve future problems, being able to provide recommendations, improvements, that kind of thing. Lack of communication can be a huge problem because you could go down an implementation path that is just completely wrong. And depending on the environment you work on, where you don't receive a lot of feedback, you could be like a month or two into development before someone goes like, hey, what the hell are you doing? You're completely off base here. But it's kind of on you as the developer to communicate and work with whoever is giving you that problem to succeed. So I don't know your situation in class, but if you are given a vague problem to solve, one thing I would look to do is get clarification. Because in the real world, that's what you have to do. You're not always going to have a concrete idea of what needs to be fixed. Your client will not have a concrete idea. They're going to be like, this is a problem. They're not going to give you the answer. And so that's kind of like where time and experience, working with others, working with clients or business stakeholders, that just happens over time. That's not something you just come out of the womb and be a genius at being able to solve. So the only real guidance I can give you here is computer science, definitely, or engineering, computer science, regardless of language, regardless of problem domain, and then communication. So if something is vague, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Now, because it's school and maybe they want to make it vague specifically, good luck. That's tough. Did anyone else see my game just like close out of nowhere? What is it doing? Oh, it's still thinking. I've used 50% of my weekly limit. Resets in 4 days. Well, guys, as soon as this limit is reached, I can't stream anymore. I'm at a point in my career where I don't program without LLMs.
I've become rotted in the head. Oh boy. What are my thoughts on visual generative LLMs? All right. So that's tougher. I mean, I've got the inner turmoil that I assume a number of people have, right? For one, LLMs are super helpful. At least to me. I don't have to worry about like not learning how to program because I've already done all that. I went to school, I had the internship, I've worked for 15 years, I've led teams, I've instructed others, I've done thousands of hours of code review, had conversations with other developers on how to implement, I've done whiteboard design, I've done it all, right? So I don't have to like worry about not experiencing that. So for me, Claude, LLMs in general, are super useful because it's basically doing what I do with another engineer. I provide guidance. I make sure it's implementing the way I need it implemented to solve a problem. Visual AI generation, I don't know. Because as I understand it, visual AI is only possible because non-open source art was stolen. So that kind of sucks. I totally get the benefit, especially if you're not an artist yourself. That kind of sucks. It was already tough making a living as an artist, and now that there's a tool that took the living of artists' work and now it's available for people to use for free, that's tough. And then I struggle with the fact that, like, well, if I think like that, is that the same issue with open source code? I don't know. But I have also contributed open source. So if this tool exists that was trained on code I contributed, I would like to at least get the benefit of it. I don't know. Was I ever required to write code on paper? Absolutely. At least in school. So professionally, trying to see if I have it in my room here. I don't think I have it on me. I've always carried a notebook, right? I basically learned to do this day one of my internship. I always had like a little notebook that had like a little slot for a pen, and I would carry that with me everywhere. I use it to take notes. I use it to sketch pseudocode, to draw, that kind of thing. All of my thoughts. Because as you work, you're going to forget. Because there's just a lot going on. And so from that perspective, definitely, I would write pseudocode all the time to get some ideas down on paper. Yeah, no, I didn't have AI was not a thing when I was in college. So I totally get from like a testing perspective the need to write code on paper. But I mean, I've done that. I've had to do that, right? Because you're not like during a test, you don't necessarily have a computer at your desk to type and write code and generate, especially when like intro classes are just asking you to, like, I don't know, implement the search of a linked list, right? I don't need a computer to do that. Just give me a sheet of paper and I'll do it. And so that was a thing for sure. But yeah, school is almost certainly different than what I've experienced at this point, especially with AI. So it wouldn't surprise me if everyone is having to write physically a lot more for a lot more of their classes than what I had to do. Oh gosh, yeah, there's a whole other aspect to AI that scares me. That isn't just about assisting your productivity. It just opens the door for a lot of actors with not so good intent. Yeah, like I'm trying to remember, but even the classes where I had to write, they may have expected to, like make sure I put the semicolon in the right spot. I don't remember. If I'm being honest, I don't remember. I graduated college in 2012, something like that. Early 2010s. And so I've basically have like stopped thinking about school since then. No, not AI itself isn't the issue. AI is a tool, just like any tool. And just like any tool, it can be abused, and it will be abused. Guaranteed. If there's a way to abuse it, it will happen. So when you think about the fact that AI, at least for me personally, makes me more productive, how much more productive is it going to make someone who is looking to do evil deeds? That's kind of scares me. On a high note, this song rocks. All right, let's see what my friend Claude here has to say about the joystick. What I built: a spring return virtual thumbstick at the bottom left of the scope that steers and throttles ownership. New component joystick.qml, an item drawn with an almond shape ring. So cool. It knew without my prompting, it knew to make use of the QML shapes that I had already like pre-made for this framework. So I have a collection of shapes that are just generally useful that I knew I would need to build this game out. So it did that to make the joystick. So that's kind of nice. It's using the point handler for touch and mouse. No drag threshold, so it answers on touch down. It reports value X. Okay, so it's got that. It put it in main, registered to CMake. Verification real not assumed. It wrote tests, verified current tests still pass, injected a real wow, I can't speak. Injected a real mouse drag up left, read live state. Okay, so it did diagonal. That's good. The mapping is intuitive, consistent. Okay, so let's take a look at the delta. See if I'm okay with it. So this is the actual implementation. It's a generic item with an implicit width. Oh, look at that. It was originally 150, 150. And I was like, man, that's going to be an issue if I change one, not the other. Well, now it mapped it so that it's the same. It'll scale diagonally versus like up and down. The shorter half extent, so geometry stays centered. Okay, so that's implementation detail. Deflection, thumb offset. Okay. Hypotenuse, a little bit of a JavaScript, if you will. Do we have a divide by zero issue that could happen? It knew to check that magnitude is greater than 0, so that's good. So no divide by zero error. So this is, I'm literally just doing code review at this point. Value X, if the travel is greater than 0. Again, it prevents the divide by zero, so that's good. Yes, I am currently on Windows, but at any point, if I choose to, I can hop into a Linux environment with my framework that I have stood up here. So in VS Code, I can open a dev container. So I can hop into a general Linux container, which in this case is Ubuntu. I also have the SteamOS container so that I can guarantee any changes I make will work on the Steam Deck. Now, I won't get to it this stream. Maybe Friday. Maybe I can do this Friday, but we can try and get this loaded on the Steam Deck to verify. But I do have a dev container with Steam APIs to compile Qt and the game to make this work. I also can pull up it's not in my room, my MacBook, and same repo, clone it, build it, run it just fine. Now, from just a general game dev perspective of developing on an operating system, I'm used and more comfortable with Windows. There are some benefits to Linux that I really like, and not so many benefits. That being said, since most of my development these days happens out of VS Code, it's basically the same experience on any platform, which is intentional by me. So I've set up my entire repo and project to work the exact same way on any platform you want to develop on. So if someone is curious, you are welcome to try and clone this project locally onto your platform and see if you can get it configured and built and run the game. But I have a lot of experience leading teams for cross-platform development, and it is such a pain when every developer has their own way of doing things to keep the entire team on the same page and productive. So I have applied a lot of my past experience making teams productive into this project for the same reason. Because now I can hop on my MacBook in the evenings when I'm laying in bed, clone my project, and continue development like nothing changed. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Mac. Not that I'm aware of. I use Mac for anything I do on Windows, I do on Mac when it comes to development. Now, you got to know how to set up your environment. You got to know, install Homebrew, install the latest LLVM compiler tool chains, Android Studio if you're doing Android, Xcode if you're doing iOS. Well, I think you need Xcode no matter what. CMake for me, because I'm doing C++. And you can even download and install Qt, or my project will automatically build it for you. So it just depends. Arch. Oh, an Arch based. Nice. I've never done Arch. I've done Fedora, I've done Ubuntu, I've done Debian, I've done OpenSUSE, CentOS. Professionally, it's either really just been Ubuntu or Red Hat. That's kind of what it boils down to. So I worked at a robotics company where they did development on Linux systems because the robots ran Linux. So that just made sense. Then for other companies, it's Red Hat because they need the stability and security. It just depends. I tried earlier when I started streaming to stream with Linux or like on a Linux system, but I just kept running into the, you know how it is. Even if you are a diehard Linux user, you know how it is. There are nuances. There are little there are just little things that don't work as you expect them, or you don't have the correct driver, or the configuration isn't quite right, and those little things add up. And I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted stuff that actually worked. Now, I don't know if you guys saw this, but apparently on Windows, it was discovered an undisclosed like global ID for your operating system on your hardware, for it to effectively like map back to you in your computer. And it's like, holy shit. And so, do I have a stream about setting up a computer to stream on Linux? How would I do that? Do I just do I put my phone on a stand right here, and then you guys can watch me like try and install Linux on this computer and get everything up and running again? Because I might have to, because that's insane. I don't know if Red Hat's the only one, but yeah, you definitely need a license for Red Hat. Yeah, Windows is bloated. I get it, and the whole advertising crap inside went like I'm not like saying I love Windows, but I've got 3 monitors, 1 vertical, a drawing tablet, so that I can do. Actually, I don't have it set up. I can show you guys. Oh, my app is still running. Oh, it took. Okay. I don't know what happened. Is the AI still going? Oh, it's still going. It like took control of my mouse there for a second. Oh no. Microsoft heard me and took over the AI. But I can do I can do this, right? And I'm sure I could get this all up and running in Linux. And I'm sure it would work perfectly. I am also sure it would take time and effort. And I work 40 hours a week, minimum. And the last thing I want to do is get off work and have to go back to work to get my stuff to work. I just want it to work, guys. Now, it is getting better, I hear. Especially with like what SteamOS is doing. It's getting a lot better. Anyway, you like my drawing? So this kind of gives you an idea of what I'm working towards here on porting. So you got the mini map right here, so that you can kind of see the full view. But then this is kind of what you would call an attack display. So it's more focused on offense versus defense. And then I'm trying to decide if I want the standard health bar, fuel, mana, that kind of thing, or if I want to do that more rounded gauge that I had before. I want to make it easy and approachable. And I'm not being a game designer, I'm not sure 100% which one I would prefer yet. So I've been sketching this stuff out. God, when I was a kid, I've always been into computers, right? I assume anyone here who is into programming or software or hardware, what have you, whatever your interest is, you've probably had some kind of interest, right? I have always had an interest, even as a little kid. I remember my family had a Windows 3.1/95 computer, and I taught myself as a little kid how to use a floppy disk. and the 3.5 inch one, not the 5-inch one. And, you know, as a kid who knew nothing about computers, you don't know what a drive is. You don't know the difference between a C drive and an A drive. So as a kid, when I learned how to change it from C to A so that I could save a file to it without my parents telling me, because my parents didn't want me messing with it. And so they wouldn't teach me. So I had to figure it out myself. And when I figured it out, that was I was hooked. And then I got into like tearing apart computers and upgrading computers. I remember in high school, I worked for the the high school let you work for like IT. And so I was part of the team that would walk around rooms and like replace faulty drives or bad RAM, that kind of thing. And so they had a box of just RAM that wasn't being used. And I was like, ooh, I can upgrade my PC. And this was back before computers had like a gig of RAM. And so I just grabbed some RAM sticks, opened up my family computer, plopped them in, and it worked. We got more RAM. I was like, hell yeah, this is awesome. So I've always been into computers. And Bill Gates, he was an idol. I was like, oh man, could you imagine? Man. I hesitate saying this streaming on Windows because you know Microsoft's listening. But you guys are all complicit. So if you're on Windows, as I say this, you're in it with me. Deal? It's a shame to learn he is not such a great person. Turns out CEOs aren't great people. And you kind of have to not be great in order to become a CEO, it seems like. And that's a bummer. It's a real bummer. All right, what happened here? Verified with real injected input, not just assumed. Okay, so it did the QML cache gen. Adversarial review caught 3 real issues, all fixed and re-verified. Throttle brake spans -1 to 1. Okay, square hit area low. The review remains flags. Where okay, I mean I'm not too worried about the implementation. I don't think it's going to be that complicated. I'm more worried about the scaling of the image. Let's pull this up in. Let's build it for web and pull it up. See where we're at. Oh boy. Trying to get into the C world. Well, it depends. I mean, are you of working age? Do you have experience? I would, I've always done C++, so I've not really transitioned to another language in my career. I've done like, I would say if I had a second language, it would be Python, just because the general usefulness of cross-platform scripting with Python. I am no expert by any means, but I know enough to like, I can write a class, I can get something running, I can parse files, all that fun stuff. And so having that on my resume, I got a couple years ago at this point, a job in robotics where a lot of the implementation was actually written in Python. And so it's funny, I got interviewed for the job as a C++ engineer, got asked C++ questions, was even asked to do a take-home C++ implementation, nothing crazy, just like a couple hours of work. And then once I got the job, I spent the year writing mostly Python. So if anything, that's how you transition, I guess. I really don't know. But with C, I assume if you know how to program, if you know If you know how to allocate memory, you know what a pointer is. You know how to write a function. I mean, you know your data structures. I feel like it shouldn't be too crazy to transition into C. Spend your own personal time learning the syntax if you don't know it. That's probably the first thing I would do personally. Having not written C in years, I would need a refresher. I would probably want to like make an actual project out of C. So I'd feel a little confident going into an interview. Know your idioms. Every language has their idioms. Does this launch web? I didn't think so. Build. Okay, that is obviously speeding up and slowing down, so that's good. So the other issue is does that actually work? Let me build this for Windows real quick and we can test it. Windows. All right. So this is running on Windows now. That works. And then if I zoom in, that looks good. Hell yeah. I like that. I mean, you got to have the smallest finger in the world to use it, but it'll work. I like that. Sweet. Okay. Now here's the fun part. Let's get this committed, pushed. I don't know how long it takes from merged to building to deploying to Cloudflare to showing up on my website. And one last sanity check for implementation. Make sure AI didn't do anything like super crazy. If you're using an LLM and this is tough because if you're learning, then it's just going to generate stuff and it's going to just work, right? Mostly. And you're not going to know if it's how it should be or not. For me, I'm going to code review. So we have our rectangle. Now, this sounds confusing, but in QML, if you give a rectangle a radius, it becomes a circle. Go figure. So that looks fine. Gates the spring so the thumb is placed at center on load rather than animating in from the origin. Okay. We've got our style, panel background, range ring. That's fine. I'll probably have to implement an actual theme for the thumbstick, I guess. I don't know. Maybe the color's fine. It does a little bit of animation. On the X and Y position is what it's doing. Oh, and the opacity. So that's what's happening. So when you touch and actually use the thumbstick, it increases the opacity so it becomes brighter. So this is kind of how it snaps back to the center. It's animated. That's cool. Containment mask, making sure... What are we doing? Confine hit testing. Oh, okay. So this is making sure inputs aren't occurring outside of the circle. And then we have the object that actually handles the touch controls. Yes, without review, it becomes a lot harder to maintain. I haven't done anything like crazy complicated, but yeah, I've tried vibe coding. It's hard to keep track of what's happening, because anyone who's written software knows it doesn't take much for the software to eventually become complicated and to know where all the state changes are. And let's say you need to add a feature. Well, now I got to add it in 1,000 different files. And so, like, once you vibe code, you kind of have to keep vibe coding in order to make any progress. And the more you vibe code, the worse it gets. But you can't stop vibe coding. So I try, when I use the assistance, to make sure I understand what's actually getting added. And for now, this in main is fine, because I do plan to move stuff into their own place eventually. On active changed. Clear. Yeah. Okay, so when we lose focus of the window, we clear the actions and we set our steering and throttle back to 0, which should bring the thumbstick back to center. So that makes sense. And does the CMake change make sense? Doesn't get simpler than that. All right, so create a branch. Touch, joystick, creative writing. All right, and assuming this all passes, which it should, the only thing, actually, no, it should only take a couple of minutes. I'll get that merged, and then it's going to run on main, and when web builds and deploys on main, because it only deploys on main, then it's going to build. Actually, I don't even know if it needs to build. I think it's just going to install the deployment onto the Cloudflare worker. And then you should be able to just go to the website, hit play, and you'll have a thumbstick. And we're one step closer to this being a game. I'm hoping I'll have some free time this weekend to just, like, knock a bunch out. What was my Trill is out. Ooh, he just snored loudly. All right, what time is it? All right, I'm not gonna sit and have you guys watch paint dry here. So once this completes, I'm gonna merge it, and then at your own convenience, if you choose to, this touch control should now be present for the game. I have achieved what I wanted to this evening. I think the next step, let me think. Now that we can steer, maybe range in, range out, because right now this is kind of set to 40 and 80 kilometers. And as you can kind of see here, when the enemy is on top of you, you really don't know how close they actually are to you, because this is 40 kilometers, so they could still be hundreds of meters away. I mean, he's probably on top of you. So I want to be able to implement that, maybe. The other thing I'm struggling with here is if that is too much input control, especially for mobile, because I'm eventually going to add some buttons down here for you to like select or once the target is selected, shoot at it or defend against it, that kind of thing. And as this is going to be a rogue light, I think, you'll eventually have more abilities or stronger abilities to determine how you want to engage with this combat. So I'm going to need to have like an action bar down there or something for you to actually do stuff. So I'm imagining left hand steering, right hand input. Ooh, you know what? On touch, do I put in the bottom right corner a radial buttons for input? I gotta think on that. But anyway, missile firing, targeting, and maybe some behavioral maneuvers for the AI is probably next on the table. Probably. We'll see. Tomorrow is Thursday. I am going to take a break from programming and going to go back to Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. We're getting really close to beating this game, I think, or only halfway. I'm not 100% sure, but I really want to beat my childhood game that I have never beaten, and I will stop at nothing to get it done. Even if no one watches, I will beat this game. So that's my plan tomorrow. And then Friday, I'll be back here. I have a Steam Deck. Maybe we see if my Steam OS build actually works, because I haven't actually loaded this on the Steam Deck yet. So it'd be kind of cool to do that. And we'll see what that looks like. All right, folks. Once this merged, it should be on the website. Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. I'll see you later. Bye. Have a good night. Thanks again.